Don't be afraid to work directly on the knee. Again, light and brisk, prepping the tissue. We're gonna work all the way around the knee, okay? Just like drawing a little circle, little scrubby scrub all the way around the kneecap. Now, if you are going around the kneecap and something feels extra sensitive, so say this area felt extra sensitive, you would really want to give it a lot of prep. What we're going to do is we're just going to do a 360 of the knee. Again, just doing the poke and wiggle wiggle technique. I am a little slick, so poke and wiggle wiggle is better done dry, so you can just wipe it. And we are going to come all the way around the entire patella, which is just a fancy word for the kneecap. Okay? With the poke and wiggle wiggle, again, if you find something that needs more attention, give it some intention. You are going to learn an awful lot about your body. Right this minute, I'm learning that my lateral quad that's going under the patella tendon is extra tight and that I need to go back and poke and wiggle wiggle some more later today. Okay. Also, don't forget, if you were experiencing extra tightness behind the knee, you can just go right in and poke and wiggle wiggle any of those tendons. You can do muscles, tendon, or fascia with the poke and wiggle wiggle technique. Okay, and then last but not least, I really like to get under the patella tendon. So one of these weird myths out there is that the kneecap is not supposed to move, but it is. It's supposed to move down, up, and side to side. So I want you to check yours and make sure that it is able to move. And if it's not, you want to give it, a little tugging and try to get it to move. If it doesn't move, you're going to want to continue to nug it until you can get the freedom of that patella tendon, because we don't want that thing scarred down. If it does move and you can pull it up, it is awesome to come right in underneath the kneecap. And I just retracted the kneecap backwards, and I'm taking the nugget and going right into the patella tendon. Can we have a moment to say, and just poke and wiggle wiggle until you've loosened that knee. And then you can always go back and check and make sure that that kneecap has full freedom. So don't put too much thought into this, you guys. It's literally just a nice light scrub. And remember that the fascia is just below the skin. So this is a light and brisk movement, and we're just going to go ahead and 360 the lower leg quickly to prepare the tissue for more intense work. So you should be able to see some redness, which is great. So I'm going to go ahead and move around to the inside and just keep it going light and brisk. And I do want to mention that I always want you to be aware, no matter what you're blasting, to be aware of your posture. Make sure you're not hunched over, and make sure you have your abdominals on. Make sure you keep your shoulders relaxed. Make sure that you work your muscle all the way from the origin to the insertion. So here I'm down on the Achilles and going all the way up, my calf. And you can do this for as long as you want. I'm teaching this more as a demonstration. So feel free to go ahead and do the full 2 to 5 minutes. So one of the key places in our lower leg is between the shin and the anterior tibialis. So we do what we call the poke and wiggle wiggle technique. You can use the nugget, the mini 1, or the mini 2 to do this. And what you're gonna do is just start right south of the knee, and right to the side, the outside of the shin, and you're gonna go ahead and poke and wiggle wiggle. And we're gonna do this all the way down to create kind of a little dented stripe all the way down. This is super important because if the fascia is so tight, it will literally drag this muscle up and over your shin. And that can cause a lot of pain because this whole lower compartment is basically being choked out. So with the poke and wiggle wiggle technique, I'm showing you a fascia line. But you can also use the poke and wiggle technique to open any of the tissue. Okay? So, I don't want you to feel limited to this particular area. That's just a great way to get us going. But anywhere on your lower leg, you can use the poke and wiggle technique. For instance, going right into the ankle, right into the talus joint is a great idea. You can also come around the sides of your ankle bones. And I'm also a huge fan of taking anywhere where the muscles are extremely tight, and people tend to be super tight in the peroneals as well as the anterior tib. You can go right into the muscle and do the poke and wiggle and incorporate it with what we call the golf ball technique, because so say I wanted to get this entire area here, I just turn it into a golf ball with this poke and wiggle. You would be shocked how well this technique works. It's really, really good for any type of stubborn knot. So see how I turn that part into a golf ball? And then once we're through treating the area, you just simply want to go back with the big claws, or you can use the Facer Master Blaster. And then you can flush it with your hands as well. Now I'm going to prep the foot. We're going to do the dorsal surface first. Again, you want to keep this light. We have not a lot of tissue and a lot of bones, so you don't want to pop any blood vessels in the foot. So again, light and brisk. You can get right into that ankle. I like to go around all the bones. Be thorough. And then we're just going to hit the plantar surface of the foot, which is the bottom side. Again, with light and brisk. So what you should see is that we have a lot of blood flowing and the tissue is ready to accept a little bit deeper work. So once the tissue is thoroughly prepped and you've treated from the knee to the ankle, then we can really go back in and get a little bit deeper and more effective on the ankle and the foot. So I absolutely love the small claws for this. You literally think about each one of your toes as an individual piece, and you let the claws straddle that part of the foot. So we're gonna do the big toe, and I'm just telling you, you're gonna love me after you finish this. So this claw right here is actually going down between the toe, and then these claws are straddling it. And you go all the way out to the nail, and then you come back up all the way to the ankle. We've got 5 toes, so we gotta give all 5 toes a little love. And we've got to give them love on the dorsal surface as well as the plantar surface. So this may take a little longer than the instructional video, so feel free just to take your time and enjoy this part of it. And as you can see, I'm moving on. I'm onto the ring toe. And then we're gonna go all the way over to that little piggy toe. And I really love to go all the way down the side, from the tip of the toe all the way to the heel. Then it's a great idea to go a little deeper and 360 these ankle bones. This is where we have a lot of issue. Remember, the fascial lines come all the way from the head in some cases down to the feet. And then let's not forget the Achilles tendon. Great, just straddle. If you have a thicker Achilles tendon, which sometimes we do, we can have accumulation of fascia, you can switch back over at any point and use the bigger claws of your Mini 1, Mini 2, or the original Fascia Blaster. Okay, here is where it gets good. We're gonna go ahead and take the nugget and do a poke and wiggle between every single toe on the top. And you're probably wondering, well, wait, there's bones there. That's okay. There's a little bit of muscle and there's a little bit of fascia on top, and you just go right in. Okay, so you're gonna do that with all 5 toes, just striping in between each of them, okay? You can also, any place that you're experiencing any type of discomfort in the ankle, wherever you feel it, poke and wiggle. So what we're gonna do is just go ahead and take your Master Blaster or your Face Blaster for prep. Extra emphasis, you guys, in terms of the hip on these high quad tendons. Totally okay to go cross fiber, and don't worry about lymph nodes, your surface to those. Okay, so I got good and red there, and then we want to go ahead and work all the way down the quadriceps. Remember, you guys, the quads are a very big group of 4 muscles that go all the way to the knee. Actually, they go through the knee, they become the patella tendon. And then you have your anterior surface line of fascia, your deep anterior line of fascia, as well as your spiral line, all running through here. So we are doing a lot of structural fascial line work just by blasting the quads. So go until you start to turn red or till you feel that heat. We're gonna go back and use the original fascia blaster. We want to get a little deeper into the tissue as long as our tissue allows for it. And we're just gonna simply do the fascia blasting technique. I'm still light and I'm still fast, but I have been blasting for a long time, so the claws go right in. So only go to the depth that your body allows. And again, tons of attention, you guys, blasting all around these hip flexors. You can even take the claws and kind of scoop away to really get those tendons. You will have a very tight hip if your fascia and your tendons are having a party in your hip. And I don't mean a good party, I mean where they are stuck together. We want to separate those. So we're just going to start around to the back, and we're going to start prepping the tissue along the sacroiliac joint, which is excellent for so many things. And then we're going to move around our 3 muscles on top at the surface, glute max, median, and min. There's 6 other little guys underneath, including the piriformis, which is an issue for a lot of people. So again, you want to do this until you get red, and we're just working the surface layer of tissue. Then we're going to move on around and get right into that TFL. Nothing wrong with going a little lower if you're doing this for beauty, for this area. This is an area that a lot of people from a physical standpoint are not overly happy with. And then, of course, the all-important glute hammy tie-in. We're gonna use the Master Blaster, and you're just gonna come in and work where your hamstring and your glutes meet. I went ahead and included this in the glute tutorial because this is part of what shapes the glutes. Okay, once we get the tissue warm, we're gonna go back and repeat that. Same process using the Mini 2. Great and easy to single hand those, and we want the larger claws to get more into the muscle tissue. So again, we're gonna start at the SI joint. If you'll notice, I'm going a little bit harder, and you can go all the way down around the whole glutes, keeping a brisk and light movement. You can press down as hard as you want, as long as your tissue is allowing for it. We don't want to push through pain. Okay, whole glutes, everybody. Then on to the TFL, which is what becomes our IT band, so feel free to add that to your glute program if you like. Then once we're done, if you found any area that had either a fascial distortion that could present as cellulite or an area of pain or sensitivity, that's when we're gonna go back and use the nugget on either the Mini 1 or the Mini 2. I personally like the Mini 1 for this. A little easier to reach around the back there. And we're just gonna do poke and wiggle wiggle anywhere we experienced a trigger. Sensitive areas, knots. You know, I know one of the things we hear a lot is about piriformis, okay? So those attachments come across the glutes. You can go right for them. And I am pushing into the glute tissue. Remember, the nugget is great, such as going along the back side of the TFL. It's a simple poke and wiggle wiggle. And you should have a slight discomfort sensation if you are working on something that has some type of myofascial issue. So don't let that scare you away. Those are the areas that need it the most. So we're gonna start with prepping the tissue. And for the sake of modesty, I'm gonna be doing this over clothes, but always fascia blasting is done on bare skin with oil. So we're gonna move right into one of my favorite muscles, the tensor fascia lata, or the TFL. It runs right here and then it becomes the IT band. So it's super important in terms of the health of the hip, as well as other just beauty factors in this area. So I'm using the face blaster, and I would do this until we just had a little bit of redness. And again, you can come up higher than that, and we'll explain all of that in the ab and back tutorial. Then we'll move on to the glute area. It's very easy to do this one-handed, and you can go all the way around to the SI joint, all the way around to the ASIS bone here, okay? So we're doing basically the entire booty area. And then the area that I don't think a lot of people think about is prepping where we have one of the primary hip flexors, which is the psoas. It causes a lot of issues for hip. So you want to go ahead and prep all along this area here. So we're basically going from just under the chest and down all the way to the hip flexors here. I like a diagonal, one-handed, but however you can get this going and get that surface layer of fascia, I'm okay with. All right, once we get it nice and warm, we're gonna go back with the Mini 2 or the regular fascia blaster. You just wanna have these bigger claws, and you're just gonna do the exact same thing. I really do like the Mini 2 for this process because it's great leverage over the hip. And it's just super easy to one-hand it. Okay, so we'll do TFL. Again, you can go a little bit above and below. Then we'll move on to all of our glutes. Most people absolutely love doing this. It feels amazing. Making sure you go all the way from the SI around to the front. And then you're just gonna go a little deeper. Same technique across the abdominals. Now, if we have less than flat abs, it is okay to brace the skin and kind of stretch out so that the fascia blaster can glide easily. So you can just go back and basically anywhere use the poke and wiggle wiggle technique. Most people tend to be really tight right around the actual hip bone. There's a lot of forces of fascia that come in on the hip bone. There's nothing wrong whatsoever with going all the way around this hip, okay? If you were sensitive in the back, totally okay to take the nugget and do a poke and wiggle wiggle right along the SI joint. Many of us start losing that mobility back there. And then I just have to say, this is Ashley's jam. The hip flexors are usually what causes the hip to get jammed. So I actually like to teach people to go in and do the poke and wiggle wiggle with the back side of the handle of the fascia blaster, and you literally hold it with two hands, get some leverage. I like doing it in a bent position because the hip flexors are shortened, and then you literally just poke and wiggle wiggle, okay? You wanna start these guys with the handle because it's less intense, and then as things begin to loosen over a month or two of regular work, you can go back and actually use the tip of the nugget. We sit all the time, you guys, and so these muscles are always in a shortened position, and usually when people have hip tension, this is just a part of the problem. Anyone who follows me knows that I'm all about the psoas muscle. It attaches on the femur head and then to our lumbar vertebrae. So that's kind of a bad design because we sit all the time and that psoas never gets lengthened. So a little bit more of an advanced technique is to palpate the psoas using the back side of the mini one. So the psoas goes from right here to basically right here. So what you want to do is just situate it softly and gently into a poke and wiggle wiggle. Now as far as the distance, I'm halfway between my belly button and my hip bone. And I just poke and wiggle. And if you want to make sure you're on it and lift your leg, because the psoas is the only hip flexing muscle in the abdominal region. So you just poke and wiggle right up. Very, very highly effective. The first thing that you want to do is just go ahead and prep the tissue with the Master Blaster or the Face Blaster. And I'm going to be using both because I like to get it here in the center using the toothbrush method. So we're brushing the teeth and across to the sides. And don't worry about going over the breastbone. You're good. You're on tissue, you're on muscles, you're on fascia, and you're just doing it light and brisk until you get to the point that you begin to turn red and feel some heat moving into the area. So I'm going to go ahead and include the front of the shoulder in the chest tutorial. I think it's super important for helping us get our shoulders back, and it's definitely a huge part of the deep anterior fascia line. So just prepping everything. Switch hands. Again, the little claws are best for prepping the tissue because they only get the surface layers and they kind of tell the body, hey, get ready because we're about to fascia blast you. All right, remember, this is a tutorial, so you can prep as long as you feel that your body needs it and that your muscles are going to be receptive to the treatment they're about to receive by the original blaster. Same method, you're just going to put more pressure and a little more vigor into this one. And remember, your prep could be 2 to 5 minutes. But if this is a real issue for you, you go as long as you like. So I'm going to use the original blaster for the front of the chest. And again, I have on clothes, so you're welcome to go a little lower. Just don't blast breast tissue or breast implants. And then I really like the Mini 2 for this section here. Remembering that we're working myofascial tissue, so you can press a little harder as to penetrate into the muscle as long as your tissue is opening and allowing it. It's better to do a little bit at a time than it is to dig hard on the first day. Then, when you are scanning your body by fascia blasting, anywhere that you felt tension or gravel or something that could be muscle knot, you simply go back with either the Mini 2, the Mini 1, or the nugget tip, and you're simply going to use the poke and wiggle wiggle technique to further loosen the tissue. I love this particular line that I'm on because the deep anterior fascia line resurfaces right here along our breastbone. So I'm just using this as an example of how to poke and wiggle and where to wiggle wiggle, but you can also do it in the muscle, around the muscle, between the fascia lines, or anywhere your body needs it. So we're gonna want to begin with either the Master Blaster or the Face Blaster. So we're gonna start, and it's nice, brisk, very light movements from the sternum down to the pubis, running directly up the rectus abdominis. And this should feel really good. One question that I get asked a bit is if the skin is moving, then it is totally okay to take this to one hand and to brace the tissue and stretch and elongate out the abdomen. Then we're gonna move on to the obliques, and you just roll to the side and work all the way up to the ribs and down to the hip, as well as around to the back side, remembering that obliques wrap. And there's also so much fascia that is running through here in the lateral lines. Okay, then we can come across. We're gonna do the same thing on the other side, hitting the internal as well as the external obliques, and also hitting the anterior and posterior fibers. And I'm showing this quite quickly for the tutorial, but feel free to do this until you really feel like you have prepped the tissue. Okay, then we want to go back for the work. So we're going to come in with the original fascia blaster, get a little bit more depth. Remember that you have all of your muscles protecting your organs, so you're okay to give it a little pressure. And we're going to do basically the same series here. But I'm going to give you a few little tips because I know a lot of people are working their abdominal area for the look. So I want to make sure I give you ways to carve out your abdominals. So we're going to start with the rectus abdominis. Anyone that has C-section or other scar tissue, feel free to go right across it in both directions. I call that the teeth brushing direction. So you can either brush them to the side or you can brush them up and down. Then you can come back and do what we call the baseball diamond. So if you think of your pubis and your hip bone and your sternum and your other hip bone as a baseball field, you can go from home to first, which is really nice for the low V. Then you can turn it, go from first to second, and then you can go from second to third, and then we take it on home. Okay, you can also go on to the edge of the fascia blaster like this and give yourself hopefully a 12-pack going in between the musculature of the rectus abdominis, following it as if you are chiseling a statue. Also, I want to add that I really do like to get, as part of the obliques, up onto the rib area. If you are a female, you wear a bra, a lot of times that can pinch the fascia, and we tend to get really tight through here and also have the rippling effect. So it's really good to do the ribs, and from a functional standpoint, there's many lines of fascia that crisscross here. Then we just go back and really get the obliques, front and back. And again, you can do this, we say 2 to 5 minutes per region, but you can do it as long as your body will tolerate it. And then we just quickly do the other side. So I like to just rest the arm on my thigh and just go ahead and go into the deltoid. Now remember, it comes around like this, so we want to get all around it. Now when we think of shoulder, you probably think of the top part of the shoulder, but I like to think a little bit more about the attachments on the inside. We're going to go ahead and prep the deeper tendons of the tricep as well as the lat, which ties in underneath the arm. Now, once you feel nice and warm, then we're going to grab an original size blaster with the larger claws and we'll go into the myofascial tissue. For the shoulder, I like to use the Mini 2, but you can use any blaster that has the original size claws. So it's just the same technique as we used during the prep. You're going to come all the way around the deltoid. This is somewhere I get tight a lot, and one of the things that feels really good is to use 2 claws and go straight up the deltoid. The deltoid has 3 pieces, anterior, medial, and posterior. Then you'll also want to incorporate the tricep tendons. Notice that I'm going harder, you go to your comfort level, and then we'll want to get directly in the armpit. And remember, this is a tutorial, so you're going to probably want to go a little longer than what I'm doing. We recommend 2 to 5 minutes per area. Once you've completed your blaster session, one of the most amazing things that we have is the tip to the Mini 2 and the Mini 1 and the nugget, because you can go back and really get into those areas that are causing you issues. So when you were body scanning during your fascia blasting session, you're going to want to go back to the areas that felt the tightest, and you're going to incorporate the poke and wiggle wiggle technique. Sounds silly, but that's exactly what we're doing. We poke into the tissue and then we wiggle. Now remember, arms tend to get really bound. This may be one huge chunk, and if it is, you would just poke and wiggle wiggle, literally the entire thing. And you can also incorporate this back on the tricep tendon. Ooh, mine's sensitive today. It's needed. Another issue that people may lump in with shoulder is when we have issues with impingement of the shoulder or things going on with our AC. And AC is the acromion, that's the A, and the clavicle is the C. So it's totally awesome to go and poke and wiggle wiggle all along the clavicle, both sides. I'm just showing one for right now. And to poke and wiggle wiggle along the acromion process. So you might be asking yourself what impingement is. So if you come up here or back here and you feel a pinch or a bite, that is when you know you need to work that AC joint, the nugget. So we're gonna start down on the forearm. Remember that this technique is light and brisk, and what you'll feel is warmth. So go until you can feel some looseness, and then you can move on to the next area, which is going to be this side. And again, the reason I'm knelt down by the stool is because I like to rest the arm. I've seen people pick up the blaster and they're contracting while they use it, so it's good to just go ahead and let the arm rest. Now remember, I've been fascia blasting for a long time and I get red almost immediately, so this may be a little longer process for you, and that's okay. We recommend about 2 to 5 minutes per area of treatment. So then we're gonna move on to the bicep. And again, I'm using the stool to brace and just using the face blaster right up the bicep. Super important for elbow health. And then you actually want to prep directly inside the elbow with some scooping technique. So I'm basically doing this inside the elbow with it slightly bent. And then we can move on and prep the tricep. I'm resting my hand on the back of my head, and with this shoulder, I'm scapular depressing so that I don't get up into my neck. It's really important not to jack up another part of your body while blasting another. So always keeping in mind the total body mechanics. So I feel good and red, and we will be moving on to use the Mini 2. So the same areas, you're just going to go a little bit more intensely. As you can see, the claws are going down between the radius and ulna. Now again, that may not happen for you right away, but with some diligent work and being consistent, you will be able to get to your deeper layers. Okay, notice how fast I'm going. Something people always say is, oh my gosh, you're so much faster than what I do. So just remember, you're not massaging, you're fascia blasting. When you flip over to this side, you can go into that elbow with it straight, or you can bend it and scoop it. And remember, as you're blasting, you're looking for places that feel tight. You're looking for places that feel like a burn. You're looking for places that feel like gravel. Those are the places that we're gonna go back with the nugget. All right, onto the bicep. The Mini 2 gives the best leverage. And again, I'm resting my hand here so that I'm not contracting. This shoulder is relaxed. And then we just simply toss it up overhead and get the tricep. All right, once you have treated the whole arm, then we're gonna go back for all those little things that we found, and we're gonna be using the poke and wiggle wiggle technique. I'm gonna be using the Mini 1, but you can use the tip of the Mini 2, or you can use the individual nugget for this. So most people, when they have elbow pain, it's usually right inside of here. So what we can do is we can just go on like a seek and destroy mission and basically just poke around. And I already found a little something right here. I'm gonna poke in with the nugget and then just wiggle, wiggle. Just breathe through that and move on to the next. You can use this on your tendons, you can use it on your fascia, and you can use it right in the middle of the muscle. So if you were blasting your bicep and it felt a little intense through here, you can go back right into the belly of the muscle and poke and wiggle, wiggle. Very effective technique. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take one of the small claw blasters, either the face or the master blaster, and we're gonna prep the tissue. So you just start very light, and you're gonna be working all the way from the elbow down to the fingertips. Remember that your hand only has a thin layer of tissue, so don't bang the blood vessels into the hand with the blaster. It's a very light and fast motion here. And the claws are perfect for actually straddling the fingers, and you want to do each and every one of them on the top, and we're going to go do it on the bottom as well. You'd be surprised how much tension people hold in their actual fingers. Too much keyboarding. Remember, the prep session is to flush blood to the area, so we're really looking either for a warm sensation or turning a little red in color. So I'm already there. I'm gonna flip over and we're gonna work the other side into the elbow, down to the wrist. This is one of the best places to work the wrist because you're actually using the claws to run down the sides of the carpal tunnel. And then we're gonna move into the hand. And again, we wanna get each and every finger nice and prepped. And I just love the face blaster for this. It was like it was meant for fingers and toes. And don't forget the actual surface of the hand. Any of you that spend too much time on your phone or your computer, this is gonna end up being your best friend. Now, when we go back, you can either use the nugget, the Mini 1, or the Mini 2, and this is where we're really looking for the trigger points. So I wanna point out the ones that I normally see, which is the carpal tunnel. So the carpal tunnel runs right here. So you're gonna go in and just poke and wiggle, wiggle. So you can do it at both sides of the carpal tunnel. You can also come in, use the poke and wiggle, wiggle technique between every single finger. On both sides you can do this. And when you were body scanning during your fascia blasting session, if there was anywhere where you felt an abnormal amount of tension, you can use the poke and wiggle, wiggle technique there as well. Remember, it is for muscles, and basically any place that you have a trigger point. And for the radius and ulna, they're located right here in the arm. We even tend to see a buildup of fascia where it's a literal chunk right here. You just want to go right in the middle and go all the way from the elbow down to the wrist. These are highly, highly effective techniques. So we're going to start with one of my favorite areas. You just toss the arm up like this, and we're going to come in and actually start working into the lat. This is also working into the functional line of fascia. Then you can move on to the rotator cuff area. So I just took this arm and wrapped it around to the other side. Then I make sure my claws are on the rotator cuff, and I just kind of play it like a violin, up and down the scapula. It's super easy to do single-handed like this. Awesome with a partner, but if you don't have one, you gotta do it yourself. We also can move down into the serratus anterior. I like to stretch out to do that. That's basically all along the side of the chest and down towards the ribs. And then everybody's favorite, the upper traps. This can go up onto the neck and out to the shoulder. This is also super easy to do one-handed with the face blaster. So just opening that area that everybody has issues with tightness. So for the rhomboids, simply toss it over to the back and work inside that shoulder blade and as far as you can go out. Prepping the tissue, flushing blood to the area, and delivering nutrients. If you do not have the range of motion that you need in your shoulders, you can always add extenders to your favorite blaster. You're going to want to get your regular fascia blaster, and then you're just going to repeat the process. So we're going to start again working on the lat. Moving into the rotator cuff. And on rotator cuff, I like to give it a lot of pressure. There's a lot of arm lines of fascia that are coming through here. Really giving it brisk pressure. Hit that serratus. And then everyone's favorite, the rhomboids. Remembering that this is a tutorial, so you'll want to spend as much time working on these areas as your body needs. We recommend 2 to 5 minutes per area, but if you need more or less, it's completely up to you. This is excellent to do with the regular blaster. It reaches the traps very nicely, and you can give it some really good pressure. So once you've completed your fascia blasting session with a normal clawed fascia blaster, the mini one is great too, then you'll want to go back with either the Mini 2, the Mini 1, or the Nugget. So I'm going to show you on myself because I think so many people have those tight upper traps, and the Mini 1 is amazing. You simply push the tip in and wiggle it just a little bit. And you can do this all along the trap. You can do it in areas of your lats. You just use the poke and wiggle, 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 wiggle it a lot technique. So what we're going to do is just go ahead and elongate the back by going into spinal flexion to stretch the tissue out. And we're going to take the Master Blaster with its little claws and just start to warm everything up. I cannot stress enough that this is super duper light and super duper fast. So we're gonna prep the tissue like this. We don't wanna forget that the obliques come in, so I'm gonna go ahead and stay in flexion, lean away from it, whatever you have to do to get the tissue of the obliques elongated a little bit here. And then we'll do the other side. And remember, your prep could be 2 to 5 minutes, or it could just be 30 seconds. So if your back can tolerate the prep, then you'll want to move into the deeper structures and actually start to work into the muscles. So again, we take it into spinal flexion, and we're just going to be working through that same path. Now, if you have issues with range of motion in the shoulder, being able to reach the blaster, you can simply purchase the extenders for that. So we're going to go straight up the spine. Don't worry about knocking into it. The claws are designed to straddle it. And then again, we'll move on to the obliques, quadratus lumborum. You should be able to reach it with the claws if you're able to go in deep enough. And we'll do that on both sides. So when you were exploring your low back with the fascia blaster, you probably felt some areas that were more sensitive than others. We want to go back and use the poke and wiggle technique. You can use the mini 1, the mini 2, or the nugget to do these. I like the mini 1 because it has a little bit more length, and that's a little bit hard to reach back there. So for me, I felt it right along this ridge, so I'll just show you the poke and wiggle on my own issues. So you just stick it right in, good firm pressure, and work along the sensitive areas. So you can do this all the way around the sacrum. If people are typically tight in the SI joint, you might be tight in the low back. Anywhere along the spine is fine. I'm going to go ahead and, just for time's sake, use the face blaster for the prep in the back. But when we use an original blaster, I'm going to use the longer version. Make sure that if you fascia blast your neck, that you also add the tutorials of the head, which is what I'm about to show you, as well as the chest and arms, and from time to time, the full body. I'm gonna seriously recommend that you use the face blaster for your head. It's thinner tissue, and this is just gonna be better for you. So I have a little trick, the old Ziploc bag. Now, if you have a bald head, or you're doing this in the shower, you may not need it, but with dry hair, you can just stick the face blaster into a little Ziploc bag, and you can just use little strokes all along your head. Now my bun is a little in the way, but use your imagination. We're gonna go all the way down the top of the head, and we'll do each side with the face blaster. So I'll just show you what that looks like. Remember, this is a tutorial, so it's not something that you have to do real time with me. But if you notice, rather than doing this motion, which is totally fine if you're bald, the little scrubby scrubs are better if you have hair. We don't want to get the hair tangled in the face blaster. Super, super excellent for so many different things. Just loosening the scalp is so important. Remember that our blood and our nerves flow through our fascia, and the last place that we want to be deprived of blood and nerves is our head. And just remember to do the entire thing, and then add the tutorials for everything from the waist up for best results. So we're gonna start in the front, and you go all the way up to the jawline, and then you can go down to the clavicle. We just covered that in the chest tutorial. So we're gonna stay with the neck, and again, this is just a light and brisk movement. If you notice, I went with the muscle fibers, and I also went cross fiber, and either one is fine. Very light technique. We're not going hard at all. So fast and light. And the name of the game in neck blasting is just to basically 360 the neck. I'm leaning my head so that I can elongate the skin. Just makes it easier for the blaster to glide. So you can use your original blaster, your Mini 1 or your Mini 2, and you just want to come in and go ahead and full on blast the neck. For cross fiber, I personally like the big one. Remember, this is a tutorial, so you can do this from 2 to 5 minutes per area. I just want to make sure that you know how. You can do this with one hand or two. I've been blasting for a long time and I love it, so I tend to like a little more pressure. It's a developed taste. Once the tissue becomes loose, going harder and harder feels good, but you want to do this at a level that's comfortable for you, okay? We can also go straight up the neck, both sides. And you're just going to use the poke and wiggle wiggle technique. It's exactly the way it sounds. You just gently press and then slightly wiggle. And it's really interesting to feel how everything is all connected. One of the little spots that I just hit kind of shot up to my eye. So that tells me that that's a place in my fascia where I need some attention. It's also really effective for the neck to go along just south of our clavicle with the poke and wiggle wiggle technique. But you can use it anywhere that you feel tension or gravel or something nervy. I only recommend using the face blaster. The claws of an original blaster or the Mini 1 or Mini 2 are too big to be using on the fascia of the face. So let's begin. We're gonna go ahead and work along the jawline. And I love this for jowls and for just getting more definition of the jaw. What's great is that the claws are designed to actually hug the jawline. So you don't even have to come up and around like this, you just go directly along the jaw. Also, for a really nice jawline, you definitely want to incorporate the tutorial of the neck and the head and really the upper body as well. So when we're working on the face, it's very important that we don't blast anywhere that we don't want to lose volume. For instance, a common area that people don't want to lose volume is along the cheeks. Unless you're a chubby cheeked person, you want to keep the volume here and you want to stay away from the blaster. So I'm going to show how to blast underneath the cheek. I'm using the ridge directly below the cheekbone. As you can tell, I go really fast. It's the light and brisk movement that really works. I also suggest face blasting in the mirror because you can see the results instantly as you face blast. Also, a lot of us have issue with the nasal labial folds, and you simply take the face blaster like this and kind of spread out the face. I also really love using just 2 claws to go all the way around the lips. So I pull to the side and blast the lines of the lip. And if I wasn't talking, I probably wouldn't be banging my teeth. To get the lower, again, try to pull that skin tight. You can smile a little bit and just blast the ridge of the lip. Onto crow's feet area, get a little more oil. So you just want to stay with a couple of claws and you want to stay away from the sensitive area here and just keep it to the side of the eye. And same thing on the other side. Then we move on to the dreaded 11s. And you simply just place an entire claw right across them, and you can go up and down with this, side to side. You also can use 2 claws just above the eyebrow, like this. Amazing if you have fascia pulling your brow into kind of resting angry person face. And then of course the forehead wrinkles. I really like to get after those just by going straight up and down and across the forehead like this.